Bharati Pranam.
Om Stapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Sritva Pranamami Mahormahu Namastri Adirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchisukhaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. So we were last time discussing how he used to mix freely without fear with the wandering monks who used to pass through that area. Because Kamarpukur was virtually on the way to Puri. Uh, there was a road virtually, and those days no sadhus, many used to walk. We take maybe months, but they will still walk and reach that place. So naturally, they would halt on the way several times to cook and eat or to beg for food and all that. So there is used to be one chaul tree. I think even now that remnants of that Kamapukur chaul tree are still there. So they used to come there and camp. So many would be afraid because those days sadhus used to have this jata, this and that. But Gadadhar was absolutely fearless, and he would go and talk to them and help them and do errands for them. And once, I think that we discussed already, once he even went there, he has torn up his chadar, dhoti, and used it as a cowpin, and then and stood before his mother. Obviously, she was upset, but then this is meant here to show his absolute fearlessness and how he was very naturally inclined towards sadhus, because Vairagya was his forte, that was his speciality. Many uneducated people of the village were unable to read the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. In order to hear the epics, they would invite to their homes a Brahmin or an educated man of the community who could read and explain the text to them. Those education was really scarce that those days. There were many in the village, not many would even really attend schools, particularly women, though, no question at all. So they would invite some pandit or someone to explain, and they would always he would mimic them. Thus, when the reader arrived, people would wash their feet, offer them tobacco and a new hubble bubble, and gave him a good seat or a new mat to sit on for reading. Thus honored, it would sometimes happen that the reader became puffed up with pride. The sharp-witted Gadadhar observed how the reader would haughtily occupy an elevated platform in front of the audience and express his own superiority by reciting the verses, using an affected tone and making various odd gestures. You can imagine in a village setting, it was very always fashion to quote from scriptures. But often it might not be even very relevant. But if you quote, you're considered a great Sanskrit scholar. Whether the quotation is relevant, we don't know. It said there is one very big preacher from some other community. He quotes verbatim from many verses. Some people say that half of it is not not accurate, but you can't verify, no? Supposing I tell you Gita, 5th chapter, 8th sloka, you may think it is true, but it may be something else. So unless you are thoroughly well versed, you might not be able to verify. So Gadadhar actually, fun-loving Gadadhar would amuse people by mimicking that egotistical reader amidst their peals of laughter, because he had such a sense of art, and he would immediately capture those mannerisms and enact how they would read and all that. By studying the stories of the master's early life, we understand the kind of mind he had when he began his spiritual disciplines. He accomplished whatever he set out to do. He never forgot anything he heard. He shunned forcefully and immediately any obstacle that prevented him from reaching his goal. See, these are the real, hallmarks or characteristics of any great personality. You know, you would, uh, you would remember everything. You would never forget anything. He would never allow any obstacle to come in the way. And he was very steadfast, and he accomplished whatever he said to do. See, that's why ठाकुर कई बार बताते हैं आपका ऐसे रोक चाहिए. No, he always used to give the example of the farmers. पानी नहीं आ रहा है, पानी के लिए बहुत दिक्कत है, खेत सब एकदम सूखा पड़ा है. सो दोनों ही कर रहे हैं हाउ टू लिंक द कैनाल टू द फील्ड. एक तो कर रहे हैं तो दोपहर तरह हो रहा है. दिन उसकी बीवी आया, अरे तुम ऐसे क्यों, हमेशा तुम ज्यादा करते हो, चलो पहले. अच्छा चलो करके वो चला गया, उसके खेत में पानी नहीं आया. दूसरा के पास गया, वो तो कहले कि क्या पागल है क्या, सब भूखा मरेंगे, जाओ अभी नहीं, पहले पानी, उसकी बात सब बात. दिन भर बहुत मेहनत करके 3 बजे के आसपास नदी से, वेनाल से खेत तक पानी पहुंचाया. जो पानी का जो कल वो शब्द सुन के बहुत खुश है. अभी गया घर, हाँ ले आओ तंबाकू लेके आओ. और उसके बाद और तेल लगाया, नहाया धोया, बहुत खा के एकदम निद्रा में गया. ठाकुर कहते हैं बंगला में भोंस भोंस करे घुमच. There's a very nice expression in Bangla. The sound when you sleep, when you snore, he slept deeply snoring. So I would always say that kind of that determination, रोक चाहिए, नहीं तो होगा नहीं. आप तो सुना गया कैसे होगा? It's not possible. So he always had that tremendous, that indomitable will to achieve whatever he set forth. See, many would have died. The amount of austerity he did. See, that is why it really, it's very mystifying, because if someone is virtually the avatara, the amount of sadhana he had to do till he got the first vision of the mother, day and night, without sleep, without food, sometimes in room, sometimes in Panchapati, sometimes the deep forest at the dead of night, where even ghosts would be afraid to go. That kind of an intense sadhana. Virtually his life came to an end to that extent. इतना करके भी सब नहीं मिल रहा था, अंत में खड्ग उठा लिया, आज ही मैं खुद का खत्म कर लूंगा, तो फायदा नहीं है, आपका दर्शन तो नहीं हो रहा है, इतना भी मैं प्रयास किया. I tried, still I am not getting you. So no use of keeping this body, let me put an end. तब उनको, so imagine what it is. We all think that he'll come and do something for a few minutes in some 108 japa we'll do, and then Thakur will come and dance before us. No, it requires tremendous sadhana, unrelenting sadhana, unwavering sadhana, not bothered by any obstacles, not stopped by anything. Honestly, you must put your hands on your chest and ask, have I really done that? I'm asking, ठाकुर माँ वगैरह वगैरह हम बात करते हैं, have you done like that? So, all right, otherwise, yes, then do slowly, be patient, don't expect miracles. करता रहता हूँ, संस्कार तो बन रहा है. See, whatever you do, you are developing that संस्कार. इतना तक तो हो रहा है, अच्छा है, धीरे धीरे बढ़ाऊंगा, धीरे धीरे बढ़ा रहा है. So that much. You cannot say that, oh, I have done and I must get. No, you have not done anything to get the vision of Lord or anything like that. Say Maharaj puts it very clearly how he was steadfast, he had known this thing, and he would not brook any hindrance. कुछ भी उनका रोक नहीं सकता था. He forcefully shunned immediately any obstacle that prevented him from reaching his goal. कि साधन में जो भी विघ्न आता था, तुरंत उसका हटा देते थे. He could not see. We see that he performed all actions in this world by placing his firm faith in God, in himself, and in the innate divine nature of all people. He could not accept any idea tinged with even the slightest narrowness nor could he bear any low, impure thoughts. Purity, love, and compassion guided him always in every respect. Not only that, this is the hallmark of all great sadhakas. Amji says at one point of time, at one time I could not go through the streets of Calcutta because the billboards used to be huge about the cinemas, posters, and all that. Later on, nothing was a this thing for him. Could meet anybody. He was surrounded by the most beautiful young women of the West. Whatever they might have said, I think no one ever said a word about Swamiji's purity or character. People might have understood his Vedanta, might not have understood Vedanta, they would have differed in philosophy with him. But his purity was palpable. It's what one lady later on, she called him, he went there. He went there because her son was in the deathbed, Miss Blodgett. Later on, he passed away and Swamiji conducted some classes also in their place. She writes, after when he came down from the platform in the parliament, instantaneously he was simply surrounded, mobbed by the most beautiful looking American young women. She writes, if he can withstand his onslaught, he's a god, she writes. And absolutely they made no impression on him whatsoever because he had far descended the realm of flesh and bone and skin and all that. No, he was fully established in Brahman by the time he went to the West. So where's the question of anything relating to the earth attracting him in any way? Yes, he was fun loving. He had many Western friends. He would make fun. He would go. He would eat ice cream. All that's okay. But about his life, his purity, it was unbelievable, the levels. So obviously, that's why he was made the leader by Thakur. We realized that this aspirant's mind could not be deceived by its own thoughts, nor could it be deceived by others. You see, this is very important. Quite often, we are deceived by others, ठीक है. But खुद का कितना धोखा देते हैं हम लोग? How much we deceive ourselves? वो ये भी ठीक है, वो भी ठीक है, ठीक चल रहा है, हम ठीक ही कर रहा हूँ, कुछ नहीं ठीक कर रहा है. But we console ourselves, we deceive ourselves saying everything is working, everything is fine. No. Keeping before us the characteristics of the master's mind, shall be able to comprehend the uniqueness of his life as a spiritual aspect. उनकी जो साधक जीवन का विशेष था, what was the type of mind that he had? That there lies the secret to his sadhana, how he could do such intense sadhana. Because of his mind, its unique characteristics. We see the first clear manifestation of the master's spiritual aspirant when he was at his brother's Sanskrit school in Calcutta. पहले तो गांव में कुछ नहीं कर रहा है, स्कूल भी नहीं जा रहा है, घर पे ही बैठ रहा है. तो राम कुमार सोचा अरे कम से कम वहां ले जाओ दो चार यजमान का तो कुछ पूजा पूजा करेगा and it will increase the income करके जबरदस्ती ले गया. Because although his brother was a great scholar, he was a very orthodox Brahmin Pandit, बहुत ही शास्त्रोक्त जीवन, उसमें कोई यही नहीं है. He was like his father Ram Kumar, very austere and traditional. लेकिन फिर भी वो तो कलकत्ता परिवार का पैसे के लिए तो आया. So the day his elder brother admonished him to concentrate on his studies, Gadadhar emphatically replied, I do not want to pursue a bread-winning education. Chalkola bhada vidya ami shikhbona. I will not study that or pursue that education which is bread-winning education. बोला अरे तुम यहाँ की इधर उधर घूम रहे हो, पढ़ाई करो, ग्रामर संस्कृत सब पढ़ के पंडित बनो. बिल्कुल नहीं है, मैं नहीं चाहता हूँ. I want an education that helps one manifest right knowledge and find true fulfillment in life. देखो ये सब अंदर से आ रहा है. He was just a 17-year-old person who had never read anything, who had never gone to school. ऐसा कोई किताब पढ़ लिया, उपनिषद पढ़ लिया, गीता पढ़ लिया, वहां से बोल रहे. No, from within. The education that would help me find true fulfillment manifest right knowledge. The master was then 17 years old. Knowing that there was very little opportunity for further education in the village school, his guardians had sent him to Calcutta. गांव में तो पढ़ाई पढ़ी कहता कोई सुविधा नहीं है, ठीक है, कम से कम कलकत्ता जाके पढ़ लेगा. Ramkumar was righteous and well versed in astrology and Hindu law. He had his school near the house of Digambar Mitra in Jamapukur, Kolkata. He also performed daily worship services for the Mitra family and for a few other wealthy families in that area. एक स्कूल भी स्थापना किए, टोल कहते हैं, जहाँ संस्कृत की पढ़ाई होता था. 2-4 यजमान भी पकड़ लिया, उस सब घर पे पूजा भी करते थे, तो थोड़ा चलता था. After performing his religious duties, he spent most of his time teaching students. Soon it became very difficult for him to conduct worship services properly twice a day in different houses. इन्हें घर पे जाके सुबह शाम 2 बार जाना मुश्किल था, स्कूल भी है. Nevertheless, he could not give it up. His income from school in the form of gifts and collections was not adequate. So it's not like our high-fi schools of Delhi where he charged 1 lakh rupees per month as fees. और तो जो देता था देता, नहीं देता, थोड़ा चावल के दे दिया, नहीं तो कुछ दे दिया, सब्जी दे दिया, कुछ दे दिया, बस. No one can ask, कोई फिक्स्ड फीस कुछ तो नहीं था, इसलिए वहां से ज्यादा नहीं मिल रहा था. इसलिए यजमान जो करते थे the worship, that's where he had income, but लेकिन समय नहीं पा रहा है. So under such circumstances, he could manage his household without the additional income from worship services. क्योंकि स्कूल में छात्र तो दिन के दिन कम हो रहा था उस समय से. So naturally his main income was from these pujas. He finally brought Gadadhar to Calcutta, handed over the worship services to him and concentrated on teaching. मैं स्कूल संभाल रहा हूँ, तुम यजमानगिरी तुम करो, घर घर जाके पूजा करो. After arriving in Calcutta, Gadadhar happily performed his duties, which suited him very well. 2 बार जाके पूजा करना ठीक है. He also, I think at that time, he did not do the way he was doing in Dakshineshwar. They would have dismissed him in one day itself. वहाँ तो थोड़ा टिक-टाकी करता था. He also served his elder brother and received some lessons from him. In a short time, the noble and handsome Gadadhar became a favorite of the families for whom he worked. Actually, he was a very charming person, no doubt. As in Kamarpukur, the respectable women of those families in Calcutta were impressed by skillful actions, simple behavior, sweet conversation, and devotion to God. The cloistered ladies freely associated with him, asking him to do some small errands for them, and equally requested him sing his sweet devotional songs. तो गान तो मास्टर थे. Actually, when they knew that he could sing very beautifully, now and then they will ask him to sing also. Thus, here also, without any effort on his part, a group of devotees formed around him, as it had in Kamarpukur. During moments of leisure, Gadadhar spent time with these devoted men and women and passed his days joyfully. However, it became quite evident that after coming to Calcutta, he was still making no progress in his studies. पढ़े पढ़े में स्कूल जाना नहीं है, तो जा पूजा करके आया, कुछ गाना गाया, कुछ किया, बस उतना तक. Although Ramkumar observed Gadadhar's way of life, he did not say anything to his brother straight away. कुछ नहीं बोल रहा था. क्यों? He was afraid, क्योंकि he had deprived his mother's dearest and youngest son of maternal affection. ये तो पिताजी तो गुजर गए थे, माँ की प्यारा से भी मैं उनका वंचित किया, इसलिए को उनका खुद का ऐसे फील कर रहे थे. and brought him far away for his own convenience. मेरा सुविधा के लिए इतने दूर लेके आया उसका खींच के. Moreover, people were attracted by his brother's noble qualities and were inviting him to their homes. सब तो बुला रहे थे. बुलाना means ultimately to get converted into dakshina. ना? इसलिए would it now be proper to restrict his movements and ruin his joyful life? If Ramkumar intervened, his brother's stay in Calcutta would be as unbearable as banishment to the forest. मैं जबरदस्ती कुछ बोलूं, then तो उसका तो कष्ट ही लगेगा. Then he will feel more and more painful. Rather उसके वनवास की तरह हो जाएगा. Let him not suffer like that. If able, if his family had not been in such difficulties, it would not be necessary to bring Godadhar away from his mother. Could easily have sent the boy to a Sanskrit scholar in a village near Kamat. So मान लीजिए उस दिन का क्या सोचता, 17 साल हो गया, फिर भी सोच रहे हैं माँ के साथ ही रहना है, माँ उसका देखेगी. Gadadhar could have been then continued his studies while still living with his mother. Ramkumar thought about these issues for a few months but remained silent. कुछ बोल नहीं पा रहा. बोलना भी मुश्किल है, नहीं बोलना भी मुश्किल है. को तो कुछ पढ़ाई नहीं कर रहा है, क्या करेगा मालूम नहीं. Finally, impelled by a sense of duty, Ramkumar mindly admonished Gadadhar to apply his mind to his studies. अंत में कुछ बोलाई, अरे तुम पढ़ाई करो. Someday his simple-hearted and self-forgetful brother would have to begin leading a family life. उसका भी तो परिवार बनेगा, शादी पादी करेगी वो. If he did not start learning how to improve his worldly affairs and guide himself in that direction now, how could he manage in the future? Both brotherly affection and worldly wisdom therefore induced Ramkumar to scold his brother. Although the affectionate Ramkumar had learned some hard lessons from selfish and cruel ways of the world, he was unaware of his youngest brother's unique mental disposition. ये तो मुश्किल ना, घर पे ऐसे कोई व्यक्ति आया, उसका एक जगत के साथ कोई संपर्क ही नहीं है. How he could understand? Nobody could understand. Suppose amongst us, manager Goyal साहब इसे ब्रह्म ज्ञानी बैठे, will he understand? You think अरे क्या है, यहाँ तो सुपरवाइज करता था, इंजीनियर है, ठीक है, अच्छा आदमी है, पढ़ाई देता है, ऐसे हम लोग सोचेंगे. But how you will understand? Naturally, he was in the family. He thought that he's like me. Maybe पिताजी की तरह वो भी शास्त्रोक्त एक जीवन होगा उसका, लेकिन that he will totally neglect any worldly pursuit. Obviously, he could not even imagine that, because he did not live to see the flowering of Sri Ramakrishna in a unique way. उतना तक तो जीवित नहीं रहा. He also died very early. But still he was not able to understand. He had no concept of how his brother at such a young age had understood the motive behind lifelong efforts and goals of worldly people, and had determined a different goal for human life that shunned ephemeral sense enjoyments as well as name and fame. साधारण लोग कैसे, यहाँ भी कोई किसी को बोलो अरे ये सब कुछ नहीं है, छोड़ दो, ये सब 2 दिन के लिए है, सिर्फ भगवान की तरह बढ़ाओ, कुछ नहीं बोलेंगे. लेकिन घर बाहर जाके इसे पागल है, क्या बोल रहा है. Because everybody is busy. Obviously, no, even if you hear, it doesn't penetrate. So how he could understand? 16-17 साल का लड़का ये जगत के बारे में, धरती के बारे में सब कुछ समझ लिया, समझ के दूसरी रास्ते में चलना चाहते. He wants to go in a different direction, a different path. Obviously, how he could even imagine? So when the simple Gadadhar, unperturbed by scolding, opened his heart and explained that he did not care for a breadwinning education, Ramkumar was unable to understand him. ऐसे कि होता है क्या जगत में, सब तो पैसा कमाते हैं, सतपथ पे चलो, सच्चाई से करो, वो तो ठीक है, लेकिन पैसे ही नहीं चाहिए, कमाई नहीं करूंगा, ऐसे कौन बोलेगा धरती पे. People तो after retirement, then consultancy, फिर भी something, then after नब्बे तक करते रहते हैं ना. So how could anyone say that नहीं सब कुछ नहीं चाहिए? No income. So who would believe that? Ram Kumar was unable to understand. Reason that because Gadar had been very dear to his parents, and because this was the first time he had been scolded, he made that reply because his feelings were wounded. वो तो कुछ उसका मैं ऐसे तो आहत पहुंचाया, इस कारण से ऐसे बोल रहे हैं, सोच समझ के नहीं है, जैसे उसकी मन मर्जी बता रहे हैं. He was thinking just like that. He has said. On that day, the sincere Gadadhar tried his utmost to make Ramkumar understand that he had no inclination to acquire money-making education. But who would listen to the words of a boy? A boy is, after all, only a boy. In addition, whenever we find an adult who has relinquished self-interest, we conclude that he or she has become insane. ये तो प्रॉब्लम है. तो पहले तो उम्र में छोटा. He was much younger to Ramkumar. Obviously, he would not care. अरे तो बच्चा है, क्या बोल रहे हैं, अबुझ है, सोच समझ के नहीं बोल रहा है. So even when elder adults say, that's why, even about Thakur, उस ब्राह्मण and other people said, तो वो तो पागल है, ऐसे ही बोला. ठाकुर तो जवाब दिया, देखो जिन लोग ये सब अनित्य जगत के पीछे दौड़ रहे हैं, वो सब उनका दिमाग ठीक है. मैं भगवान की तरह कोशिश कर रहा हूं, मेरा दिमाग खराब हो गया, क्या तुम्हारा लॉजिक है? In the next 2 years, Ramkumar did not understand his younger brother's statement that day. For a while after that encounter, Ramkumar behaved carefully with Gadadhar. उल्टा गदाधर उनके बहुत समझाने की कोशिश किया, ऐसा है वैसा नहीं है, वो तो समझ नहीं पाया. उसके बाद थोड़ा चुप हो गए. Behaved carefully. After scolding a loved one, we tend to become repentant and try to regain peace of mind by bestowing 100-fold more love and care than before. Nevertheless, we find clear evidence from his later actions that the boy Gadadhar was seeking an opportunity to fulfill the desires of his heart. का हृदय में जो था भगवान का साक्षात्कार, सानिध्य लाभ करना, उसकी तरफ वो बढ़ा रहे हैं धीरे धीरे. Ramkumar did not understand young brother's statement that day. The next 2 years of his जीवन, the life current of Gadadhar and the brother changed rapidly. दोनों को जो जीवन का स्रोत जल्द बदलने लगा. क्या हुआ? Ramkumar's financial condition worsened day by day. In spite of his best efforts, he could not improve it. स्कूल से तो इनकम कम ही होता जा रहा था. A crisis was growing in his mind. Should he close the school and look for other employment? ये बंद करके दूसरा कुछ करो. He was unable to make any decision. He was convinced, however, that if he continued to spend his days in this way, without finding any alternative means of earning money, he would soon end up heavily in debt and face other difficulties. तो उधार लेना ही पड़ता है. ऐसे करते करते अंत में कहाँ मैं पहुंचूं? But what could he do? He learned no other trade than teaching, performing sacrifices, and officiating as priest. वो तो उनका पढ़ाते थे, वो आता था, और नहीं तो पुरोहित गिरी. उसके अलावा कुछ नहीं जानते थे. He learned no other trade, and at this time in his life, he did not have the energy to learn a more lucrative trade. अभी क्या व्यापार व्यापार चालू करूं, उसे तो उम्र ज्यादा है. And he now switched to a new occupation. It might be very difficult for him to find time to practice his own spiritual disciplines and perform worship. Ramkumar had a holy nature. He was content with little and had hardly any desire for worldly prosperity. ऐसे कोई वो समृद्धि नहीं चाहते थे, लेकिन थोड़ा तो संसार तो चलाने के लिए तो मिनिमम तो कुछ लगेगा ना, वो भी नहीं मिल रहा था. He replaced his worries with let's रघुवीर will be done. जैसे उनके पिताजी जो कुछ है रघुवीर ठीक करेगा. He also did Raghuveer. And with a broken heart, he continued his day-to-day life as before. By the will of God, an incident soon occurred that showed Ramkumar a way out of his difficulties and reassured him amidst all uncertainty. See, देखो ये सब, these are all, there is something, some other law that is operating in this world. कई बार हम लोग भी सामने भी तो बहुत चीज घटता है, but we don't understand. It's difficult for us to understand, difficult for us to make out, difficult for us to conclude. But those who depend only on God, उनका क्या है? At least they will develop the capacity to bear and forbear. और तो देखो आगे क्या होगा, मेरा इससे क्या होने वाले है और उससे क्या होने वाला है, मेरा क्या बाद में होने, nobody can say. कुछ भी हो सकता है. लेकिन if you have the little that tendency to depend on God, जिस जैसे बोल रहे हैं रघुवीर जैसे करेंगे वैसे ही होगा. सो उनका क्या है, उनका क्या दारिद्र्य क्या खत्म हो गया? नो, he continued to be poor, there continued to be in debt, continued to be, अभाव तो रहता था, but because he had the dependence, mentally he was at peace and he was not perturbed at all. ठीक है, जैसे ही होगा हो. Then things get rearranged. When you, quite often you are taken to the brink of disaster, आपकी इतना गिरावट आ जाता है, then slowly you find if you still hold on to God, then God slowly lifts you up. कहते ना, एक बार लक्ष्मी और विष्णु जा रहे थे गगन मार्ग में, अचानक भगवान विष्णु व्यस्त हुए कि अरे मेरा क्या हुआ क्या हुआ, नहीं मेरा एक भक्त बहुत ही दिक्कत में है, मेरा नाम ले रहे हैं, अभी जाना है, आई मस्ट गो इमीडिएट. फिर 1 मिनट बाद वो शांत हो गए, अरे तुम बोल रहे थे, नहीं नहीं नहीं, वो उसका पहले एक पागल मैड dog was searching him, was actually was trying to attack him. Then he first shouted Narayana. I thought I should rush and protect him. Then within a second he was picking up a stone to defend himself. वो तो खुद ही कर लेगा, मेरे जाने की जरूरत नहीं है कि मैं चुप हो गया. I mean, these are all stories, but very meaningful. So if someone completely depends on God, then the solution happens in many ways. Either the situation itself changes. आप जिस परिसर से, जितनी परिस्थिति से इतना दिक्कतियां हो रहा था, that gets removed quite often. Something happens. Otherwise, even if it happens, even if it is like that, you are at peace. क्यों? आप जानते हैं तो रघुवीर का विधान है, मेरा कुछ करना नहीं है इसमें, मैं तो अपनी तरह जो सतपथ में जो प्रयास करना, whatever I have to practice, attempt in a honest way, I have done. If it's still not happening, that means it is Raghuvir's will, because whatever vidya I have, either teaching or being a purohit, etc., I am doing to the best of my abilities. But in spite of that, if I am not able to make enough money, then I must clearly understand it is Raghuvir's wish. So I don't have to worry about that. So बिल्कुल वो निश्चिंत हो गए, होने दो, जो होगा होगा. But then that's why the turning point came, because it's a very, very major turning point, because now that is why the next chapter is the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar. एक काली मंदिर के माध्यम में बहुत कुछ हुआ. The whole Ramakrishna avatar is centered on Dakshineshwar Kali temple. Dakshineshwar Kali temple के बिना ठाकुर का जे is being an avatara, nothing would have fructified in that sense. Everything is so centered. The place is so important because that is the place where everything happened really. All his sadhana, all his realizations, all his great future disciples, all those who came to take the movement forward, everything, that was his center, real center where everything, congregated. And finally, from there, whatever happened. But that was the most important place. And not only that, the way it was started, the way it was constructed, the way it was consecrated, all brought a huge change in Ramkumar's life also. He also found a very reliable source of income, and bahut kuch unka, and so many things happened. So that's why they say that then an incident happened you know, soon occurred that showed Ramkumar a way out of his difficulties and reassured him amidst all uncertainties. इतने भी उनका ये था. But in spite of all that, this incident reassured him and showed him a new path whereby he could really um, concentrate and take it further. So Ramkumar was probably 14.5 when he opened his Sanskrit school in Calcutta in 1850. The master was then 14 years old. Before Ramkumar went to Calcutta, he was oppressed by family problems. His wife had died immediately after giving birth to his only son Akshay. She said that the evolved soul Ramkumar had a premonition about this and told some members of his family that she would not survive the birth. पहले ही बोला था उसका संतान होने में वो खुद ही गुजर जाएगी. It happened like that because he was a greatly well versed in the Jyotish Shastra. When Ramkumar came to Calcutta, he was perhaps thinking along those lines. Calcutta was a prosperous city filled with upper middle class people. If he could provide these families with services such as performing rituals for obtaining peace and overcoming शांति स्वास्थ्य सब करने में उनका कुछ इनकम होगा. He could even earn a reputation as a scholar by making the students of his school proficient in learning. Another possible reason for his starting a school in Calcutta was that Ramkumar must have felt a great emptiness after his wife's death. He may have thought that if he could keep himself occupied in a distant place, it should relieve his sorrow. We have already explained why Ramkumar brought his brother to Gadadhar Calcutta in 1852. 2 साल की बाद उनको ले आया था. A few years after his school at Jamapur, and how the masters spent 3 years there. If you want to learn about the subsequent events of Sri Ramakrishna's life, you must turn our attention elsewhere. ये तो chronologically लिख रहे हैं. The master's elder brother joined Chatu Baba's group in order to increase his income through gifts and collections. He was also trying to improve his school. At that time, by the will of God, a series of events took place in a well-known family in another area of Calcutta. Now the reader must focus on them. अभी रानी रासमणी के बारे में बोलेंगे और बहुत कुछ अभी आएगा. At that time, a highly respected woman named Rani Rasmani, बचपन से उनका ऐसे ही उनका ताकतदार और पर्सनालिटी देखे बचपन में उसकी रानी बड़े सब बुलाते थे. That was their pet name. Lived at Jan Bazar and settled to Calcutta. The mother of 4 daughters, she had been widowed at 44, inheriting an enormous fortune from her husband, Rajchandra Das. From then on, she managed an immense property herself and expanded it greatly, quickly becoming well known in Calcutta. लिया तो उसका बढ़ाया भी संपत्ति को प्रसार भी किया. She did not become famous only because she managed the estate skillfully, but also because her faith in God, courage, boundless sympathy for the poor, extensive charities, lavish distribution of food among the hungry, and other philanthropic activities that made her popular with all. This woman, through her noble qualities and actions, justified the name Rani. उसमें तो राजा रानी की हैसियत था, वो था सब देश का सब देखते थे, प्रजा का सब सुविधाएं, सबको सहायता करना, and commanded love and respect in every way from people, irrespective of caste. At that time, 3 of the Rani's daughters were married and had children. Her third daughter died, leaving a son. Concerned that her handsome third son-in-law, Mathur Mohan Biswas, might become dissociated from the family, Rani Rasmani married her fourth daughter Jagadamba to him and made him her own again. The descendants of the Rani's 4 daughters are still alive. उस समय महाराज दिख रहे थे, naturally family members were alive. So रानी रासमणी के बारे में तो बहुत सारे घटनाएं हैं. She was very kind-hearted. At the same time, she was very brave. Once some drunken British soldiers, when the male folk of the family, they entered, they overpowered the guards at the place. It was a big palatial house she had. I don't know, some of you might have seen where she was, I don't know, that Jan Bazar. And then they started looting. And then She took up arms and she was ready to even attack them. By the time Mathur Babu came, he ran to the barrack and complained. The seniors called back all the Jawans. Then onwards started deploying 12 British soldiers to protect the house and property, etc. And she demanded and got all compensation from the British government for whatever the guards looted. Again, another very important, very beautiful incident. Once in Ganga, suddenly the British said that fishing tax they levied. So poor fishermen, उनका तो कुछ ठीक नहीं था, कभी मिलता था, कभी नहीं मिलता था, क्या करे, सब इनके पास आए, आप कुछ करो. Then she said, don't worry. She gave a large amount of money and purchased fishing rights in Ganga. तो ब्रिटिश तो पागल है, पैसे के खरीद कर रहे करके they sold, thinking that oh she is going to set up some fishery or something. What she did was immediately she put huge blocks of wood, etc., and with chains she completely tied up the whole place, making it impossible for the British ships to come. They could not come because it was all obstructed by chains. They said, I said, I have purchased. See, if ships keep coming and going, the fish will get frightened and they'll move away. That will be loss for me. I cannot. They said, yes. And if you say anything, I'll go to court. They became afraid. Then she said, if you remove that tax, all right, I will remove this also. So then they removed the tax so that the poor fishermen should continue to fish. She was like that. Extremely noble-hearted and a very capable person also. So the incident, how she started this construction of Dakshineshwar temple and the beautiful incidents associated with that, we will see next time. She was actually a great devotee of Mother Kali. Constant and genuine devotion to Goddess Kali. To stamp the official documents of her estate, she had a seal made with the inscription, Srimati Rani Rasamani Dasi, desirous of the feet of Kali. Rasamani Dasi, my Charaner Abhilashi. Something like that. That was an official seal. She would put it on all documents. She was such a great devotee of Mother Kali. We had heard from the master that the glorious Rani's devotion to the goddess was manifest in her actions and conduct. बहुत ही विषय आ जाती थी. When Thakur was the pujari there, and she would sit completely absorbed like that. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.